Hello, everyone. So excited to kick off our GMAT Verbal Strategies event. We'll give another few minutes for folks to trickle in, or maybe a minute or two. And as we do, I strongly encourage you to enter to win our giveaway. We're giving out a free spot in our GMAT Prep Bootcamp that starts next week, $1,600 value, and I'll talk more about it later today during our event, but just wanted to give you a chance up front here. It's bit.ly/NickGMAT, and our amazing event host, Amanda, will throw that in the chat. But so excited to be here with all of you and dive in and talk more about the GMAT. We'll again share this link throughout the session. But for those of you who got here right on time, wanted to give you an extra shot at the GMAT Bootcamp giveaway. Without further ado, though, would love to jump in and share more about the GMAT and especially the GMAT verbal side of things. Today, I'll briefly introduce myself and then dive right into the content, but also wanted to encourage you to attend every other event in MBA week. This is a fantastic time. If you're thinking about an MBA, if you're applying for MBA, this is more free value than you could get anywhere else in terms of experts, in terms of strategy and preparation for the test, for the application. It's a fantastic time. So if you haven't yet, be sure to sign up for Leland and stay in the loop with everything else we have going on here in MBA week. Just a brief intro to myself. I studied econ and Chinese at BYU, and I was planning on going the consulting route, had offers from BCG and McKinsey, took the GMAT and got a really high score of 760, and then on a practice test got a 790. This was back in the classic, and a lot has carried over. And especially in what I focus on, the GMAT verbal into the GMAT focus version. But then I ended up starting a company with a couple friends in my last year of undergrad, and we got into YC and raised a bunch of money and went off to the races. And so didn't end up going down the MBA path, but I've loved to keep my foot in the door and help folks to get top GMAT scores as kind of on the side as a coach. And I've been doing that for about 5 years now with many successful clients. So excited to be here and share with you. Especially for those of you who are thinking about the GMAT verbal. Just go ahead and throw in the chat. Would love to get to know all of you as well. When are you planning to take the GMAT? This is we'll definitely talk about timing and timeline here in the event, but would love to hear from you. Let's see what folks are saying. July 12th, we have a date coming up. I love it. 30th of June, folks. June 24th, 17th. Wow. So many folks, right on the cusp, right in the throes of the GMAT. That this is awesome to hear. Have some mid-Julys. That's amazing. So many folks coming right up. Edgar, late August. Love that you're getting ahead of it here. Next year, awesome. Love to see this, everybody. We are all climbing this same mountain together. And so glad to have all of you here. Well, in terms of today's agenda, wanted to share a few core tips that I've seen lead to these significant jumps. I threw up that review from a past client who went from who increased his score by 50 points after working with me specifically on the GMAT verbal. And these are some expert strategies. We'll talk about building your plan to study and succeed on the GMAT, and especially the GMAT verbal. We'll talk about going from a verbal mentality to a quant mentality, what that means and why that's critical. And then finally, stop comprehending and start memorizing. And again, we'll dive in deep on all of this. So super excited to share all of these strategies with you today. We'll start with building your plan. So the critical thing that you need to begin with is the end. You need to start with, hey, this is when I have these deadlines for, Harvard, Stanford, Wharton, other top schools, wherever you're applying. Hit that deadline, make sure that you are giving yourself plenty of time ahead of that. And you're going to specifically want to give yourself a strong window when you're not going to be busy, when you're going to have the bandwidth. If you're in consulting or banking, you may always be busy, but when you're even able to take some time off and get get deep in the grind to study for the GMAT. You're not going to want to be doing this during finals if you're a student, if you're, working busy season or in the thick of an engagement. Um, and you'll also want to give yourself time ahead of that to get momentum. So and more important even, I would say, than those windows is also leaving room for a retake. Most people think that they can just take they're just going to take it once and it's going to be good, but the top scorers take the exam at least twice, um and often three or more times. But the critical thing there is that you give yourself enough room to do that. So for everyone who threw in the chat, "Hey, I'm taking this in June or early July," you're in a good time frame such that you could take another one in late July or early August. And I highly recommend doing so. Why? Because there's so much inherent randomness in the test. Even if you study as well as possible and you take that test, at the end of June, there are likely to be some problems that you don't jive with. You might have a bad day for whatever reason, and you want to give yourself a second shot, a second dart at the dartboard. Um, and of course, even if you did no more studying, because there are different questions, you're going to be in a different frame of mind on your second test. You might actually see significant improvement. Um, so the critical thing there again is giving yourself enough time to retake an exam, and perhaps even do so twice. Get up to the three times of taking the test. Got a great question in the chat. What is the drop dead date for taking the GMAT for round one application deadlines? Frankly, the drop dead date is right up to the application itself. So I would say your third potential retake, or your third exam, you could potentially take at the very beginning of September. So if you're taking one in July and then have early July, you have or mid July, you have a backup in August. You also have that potential backup at the beginning of September. Um, so I would encourage you to take your first exam no later than August. And August only gives you the backup at the beginning of September. That's also going to be tight with your application. If you're applying in round one, um, you're you're going to be a little bit tight, but as long as you have the bandwidth to do 10 hours a week on your application and the 15-20 hours a week that you'll need for the GMAT, that's okay. But you're gonna have to put in the hours, you're gonna have to put in the grind, and we'll talk about what that looks like. So again, working backwards from round one, though, the strongest recommendation I would have is take the GMAT in mid-July, take the GMAT again in early to mid-August. And then that gives you a third potential retake in September if needed for your round one submission. So that's the first thing. You've picked that deadline, and then once you have that, schedule it now. It sounds like many of you have already scheduled your exam, which is great. Do not hesitate. Do not wait. You need to give yourself that deadline. Go in and book the date now, today, after this call. Um, then looking at, what's the next step once you've booked that. If you're early on in your prep, you haven't gotten started yet, or even if you have gotten started and you haven't yet taken a practice test, use a free official GMAT mock. Go take a practice test now, this week, this weekend. You want to simulate test day conditions as much as possible and figure out where your strengths and weaknesses are. Um, You don't need to, if you're just getting started, you don't need to study a ton prior to your practice tests. Sure, you can do some practice questions, but don't cram forever for your first mock. You just need to establish what is your natural baseline. And you're not trying to figure out, oh, okay, hey, this is my score. That's important. But the most important thing you should be looking at with your baseline is, oh, I'm struggling with this specific type of critical reasoning or this specific type of reading comprehension or data insights. You want to be looking for the types of questions that you need to focus on and improve on. Figure out what are your lowest hanging fruit for development and improvement on the GMAT. Got a question in the chat. Will we be able to apply if we don't have an official exam result copy? Um, Yes, absolutely. You typically self-report your exam results, and then they will verify those after you've applied and you're going through the process. So, of course, be truthful, give your exact score because that's going to get verified. Um, but you typically don't need that official exam result right on the date that you apply. Although, again, I wouldn't cut it close. I would strongly recommend taking your test. If you're applying in round one, I would strongly recommend taking a first test no later than the middle of July. Um, and then giving yourself room in August to do a follow-up. So then when you're building your plan, what do you need to keep in mind? Um, I won't be able to give you a specific study plan here. I do that with all of my clients. We establish a study timeline, a study plan. So be sure to look me up on Leland, set up an intro call. I'd love to chat with you if you'd be interested to work with me on the GMAT Verbal. And build a personalized study plan for you. But as I build study plans for clients, the most important thing that I'm thinking about is breaking down the test into reps, into, hey, I need to work on the conclusion type of question under critical reasoning. For example, I pulled this here. I highly recommend with repetitions, you should be taking, of course, official GMAT questions and using all of the official GMAT materials you can get. But when you run through those, I love GMAT Club. GMAT Club is full of old official GMAT questions. It's free. They have great question repositories, and so I leverage GMAT Club with all of the clients that I work with. Um, and they're able to break it down, for example, into 705, 805 level critical reasoning. And when a client needs to dive deeper on the weakened questions, they can go to a specific subset of, oh, weaken the argument. That's what we need to work on. Let's go through all of these questions. Um, so that is a resource that I highly recommend digging into. Um, and as you're doing that, as you're going through these repetitions of different parts of the exam, I would scope it into, typically I recommend 1 to 2 hour blocks, depending on how much attention and focus you're able to give. I'd give let's say a 1 hour block for strengthen the argument questions. At the end of that 1 hour block, spend 10 minutes going back to evaluate all the repetitions you've done. What are you missing? What are you succeeding on? In the areas where you're missing, are there common threads between the questions that you're not getting correct? And highlight those, start working on those. And if you're working with a coach, that's what you'll share with your coach in your sessions is, hey, yeah, it turns out that with the logical flaw questions, I'm having a really hard time kind of making the jump from A to B in this logic. Um, and you'll be able to dive deep on that. In my work with clients, we go through every aspect of critical reasoning and reading comprehension on the verbal side of things. And I have modules that I work through on each of these to get you up to speed. But more importantly, your time, your reps, your study will be the driving force that gets you to succeed on your exam. Ultimately, working with a coach is helpful and is often critical for most people to get the top score, especially if you've been studying and hit a plateau. But you have to put in the hours, you have to put in the time and the reps to succeed. And so doing these hour blocks of conclusion questions, of weekend questions, of the humanities type of reading comprehension, um, will help you to get to that goal. And so I'd love to work with you and help you put together a study plan, and get to that place where you're able to succeed. Um, so I'll go ahead and throw in my profile link again if you're interested to chat. Um, this is my profile, and would love to set up a free intro call. It's there at the top of the chat, and let's see if I can grab it here. It's joinleland.com/coach/Nick Van Sloten GMAT. Um, and I'll send it here. Oh, awesome. Thank you, Amanda, for sharing. So next, we've got the mindset shift that everyone needs to take, from a verbal mindset to a quant mindset. Most folks, when they are going into the test, when you look at a quant question, the first thing you're going to do, right, is you're going to go through and say, okay, I'm looking at a wheel turning at a constant rate, revolutions in k seconds. Okay, so I'm looking at the I'm going to put together a formula, and I'm going to say, okay, there's 60k, right, and I'm going to evaluate how am I going to solve or kind of think through these variables. You go straight to that formula, right? Um, Instead of looking at the answers, you're not critically evaluating, okay, 60kx, oh, is it that? Or maybe x divided by k. Um, but what's so funny is when we get to the verbal side of the exam, we do the exact opposite. We go through from top to bottom. We read, okay, this is what the prompt is. This is the question. This answer, oh, maybe this answer. I don't know if I like that. We just go through chronologically. This is not an efficient way to answer a question. This is not the best way to accurately and quickly answer any type of question, and in particular the GMAT verbal. But for whatever reason, I always see clients going just top to bottom, um, and it takes too much time, and ultimately isn't going to be as accurate as coming in with a framework or a formula. Um, and so this is in my work with clients and in all of our coaches, we focus on driving formulas and frameworks, helping you shift this mindset from, okay, I'm looking at this critical reasoning question, I'm going to go top to bottom, to, hey, this is a weaken the argument question. Okay, now, what is my weaken the argument formula or framework for approaching the question? I'm going to read this question. I'm going to think through the answer. I'm going to figure out where I believe that the solution lies, and I'm going to evaluate all of these A through E in context of this weaken the argument formula that I have. And so in my work with clients, I'm always delivering these, but we also, beyond one-on-one coaching, we actually have a GMAT boot camp, and so we're giving out a free seat to this. It's a $1,600 value. So go ahead, if you haven't entered the giveaway yet. um, Strongly encourage you to enter, and just kind of piggybacking on what I just shared with frameworks and formulas. The entire GMAT boot camp gives you the frameworks and formulas, not only for verbal, but for the entire exam to succeed. In that boot camp, you'll work with one of the top coaches on Leland, a coach who coached me. His name's Bruce. He is so good. He's been working for decades with folks. He taught professionally at UCLA, to help people succeed on the GMAT. And again, there's so much to this. Today, we're only talking in this event about verbal, but he goes through all the frameworks and formulas you need to know for quant, verbal, and data insights, to succeed on the GMAT Focus. And not only do we include in that course 18 hours of instruction with Bruce, who normally charges over $200 an hour. But you also get discounts on tutoring if you decide to come back and work with him or me after the boot camp. You get all of the exam prep materials that you need, a mobile app with flashcards, full-length practice tests, hundreds and hundreds of practice questions, as well as a network of top applicants. So as much as I would recommend working with me as a coach, I would even more strongly recommend starting off with this boot camp, with this GMAT boot camp, and then coming to me post boot camp to get support on the verbal. If you're taking the test in the next 2 or 3 weeks, it probably makes more sense to work with a coach because our GMAT boot camp starts on June 11th. But for all those of you who are taking a test in July or later, or if you're thinking you may need to retake in July, strongly encourage you enter this giveaway. Even if you don't win the free seat of the GMAT bootcamp, you'll actually still get a discount code for $800 off or 50% off this bootcamp. That discount will expire tonight. But I highly recommend, if you're not the winner, to still join the bootcamp with this amazing discount, because this will give you the foundation, those frameworks and formulas you'll need to succeed on the exam. And I would say this is one of our if not our top flagship offering for GMAT. But back to our agenda, just wanted to go through our final kind of tip or strategy to succeed on the exam, and specifically on the verbal side of the exam, and that is to stop comprehending and start memorizing. I just really quickly saw a question from Karen in the chat. When will the winner be announced? That'll be announced here at the end of this session in about 10 minutes. So stick around, and I'm excited to announce the winner here shortly. So what is your goal? This is my question to you. Go ahead and answer in the chat with a letter A through D. What is your goal on the GMAT? Is it A, to learn what an MBA will be like? B, to build your reasoning skills? C, to discover new words, new math concepts? Or D, to get a high score? What is your goal on the GMAT? D, awesome. Get a high score. Okay. That's right, everybody. That is the correct answer. It is to get a high score. What's so funny, though, is that many of you approach the exam in a different way. You're not actually focused on getting a high score. When you read a reading comprehension passage, you're focused on understanding it. You dive in and you think, okay, I need to understand, what's going on. You spend 3-5 minutes on this passage. And so even though you're in your mind, you want to get a high score, the way that you go about the exam is actually not necessarily focused on optimizing for score. You're focused on optimizing for what they tell you to think about, which is comprehending. Um, and exactly, yeah, Mary just said, "Oh, I'm nice. I like this word. Oh yeah, Native Americans. I'm going to start thinking about, oh yeah, textbooks. They really do distort history and, ethnocentric European perspective. You start thinking about the content. That is not efficient. That is not going to help you get a high score. The way that you need to go through the exam, and specifically the reading comprehension, is not to comprehend, but to focus on getting points. And what do you need to get points? You need to memorize. You need to extract the important information and only the important information from this passage, rather than diving super deep and getting everything out of it. That's a waste of time. It's not efficient. It's not going to get you the high score. So how would I go through this passage? Well, the first thing that I do is actually just to skim. And as I skim, I give myself anchors. I try and find the important words, important ideas that are going to then come out in the reading comprehension questions. So as I'm reading, I'm just looking, okay, textbooks. This is about textbooks. You'll find, what's the subject of the first sentence? Scholars is or schools is the literal subject, but really what we're talking about is textbooks. Research suggests, however, okay, the author disagrees with this. Native Americans, textbooks distort history. Okay. going through, yep, they stereotype and depreciate. That's what I'm looking for. What do textbooks have an ethnocentric European perspective? Um, Argument against my contention. Okay, so there's a counter argument. Textbooks are culturally biased. Um, High schoolers can't take know that they can't take textbooks literally. But then we're coming with a counter argument to that. Attitudes about particular cultures are strongly influenced by textbooks. Everything else, nah, it doesn't really matter for this first reading, because I'm going to then go in, after I do this reading, I'm going to go down and read the questions that they've given me, and those questions are going to direct me. Those questions are going to tell me what I need to read and what I need to know. So all I'm going to do at first is find the most important stuff. I'm going to find the critical things that will help me to understand, um, that that context, that I'll need to answer these questions. So ultimately, when you're going through these questions, and I work with all my clients on this, and we focus in the boot camp on this, you are not trying to understand what you're reading. You are trying to get a high score and then extract the critical information. The way I think about this, and I talk to clients about this, is a command F mentality. You don't necessarily want to know the reading. You just want to be able to command F, and when, or control F if you're on on a PC, and in your mind. And when the question asks, what perspective do textbooks have according to the author, you command F in your mind and say perspective. Oh, there it is. Ethnocentric European. That's what you need to know. That's the type of memorizing you need to do. Can you literally control F on the GMAT? No, you can't. You can't go on your computer and control F. And that's why you have to do it in your mind. You have to be able to memorize and store these keywords and then control F in mentally to get there. And so that's something that I work a lot with clients on, is building that skill and the ability to control F. So with that, there's so much more. I typically work with clients on a 10-hour package. Then we dive deep on all of these verbal needs to help you to get over the line and succeed. So for all of those of you out there who are considering, or you're on the cusp of taking the exam, you're thinking about verbal, especially if English isn't your first language, or if you're just having a hard time with verbal, the things you need to do, you need to build a plan and get going with that plan, getting the reps that you need. You need to make verbal like quant. So don't just go through top to bottom. Use frameworks and formulas. And again, the boot camp teaches that. I teach that to my clients. But you've got to have those in place. You cannot approach it in the way that you have been in the past. And then stop trying to understand. You're trying to get a high score. You are not trying to understand the reading. You're not reading comprehension. Success does not look like actually comprehending. Success looks like memorizing, like a command F mentality. So all of these things are critical for you to succeed. So without further ado, I'm excited to announce our giveaway winner from the bootcamp giveaway for $1,600 of value. Giveaway winner is Boja Aditya Reddy. Boja, we're super excited to have you in the program. It's going to be a blast to go through the boot camp with you. And for everyone else, I'll shoot out a text, um, and you'll get $800 off the boot camp, which is a huge discount. Again, it expires tonight, so if you have any questions, text me back. We'll send an email as well. But we would absolutely love to have you in the program with us. If you're taking the GMAT soon in the next few weeks and you need a verbal coach, I would love to work with you. Set up a free intro call with me. Let's put together a plan for you to succeed on the verbal side of things. But would also love to have you in the boot camp, whatever makes the most sense for your situation. And on the right here, we have a QR code that'll connect you with our client success team. If you're a few years out, I saw a question in the chat. If you're a few years out from the MBA, or you're just getting started on your path, highly recommend you connect with our client success team, and they'll point you in the right direction. I had a question in the chat. How many hours is the boot camp? It is 12 90-minute sessions, so 18 total hours over the course of 6 weeks. Very intensive, and it is the best way I know of to ramp up on the GMAT. So highly recommend that you connect. Highly recommend that you join the boot camp, or connect with me if you're looking to work with a coach. But ultimately, just go out, take these tips, and succeed on the verbal. It was so great to be with all of you here, and wish you the best of luck in climbing this test prep mountain. Have a good one, everybody. And I highly encourage you to come to our MBA week events, going forward. We've got a great lineup for the rest of the week. Have a good one.